Hey everyone, welcome back for another video. My name is Tanya, for those of you that are new here, and I am a watercolor artist and a furniture flipper. So I will be showing you both types of tutorials on this channel. But today I thought I'd show you a little watercolor. I get asked once in a while how to use liquid Frisket. So I decided to do a video for you. So I'm going to be showing you by doing a whimsical little landscape. So I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so today I'm going to show you how to use white masking liquid Frisket. And there's so many different brands out there, but I just picked up a really generic one. I think it was at Michael's, I'm not sure. So what liquid Frisket does is it protects your paper. So if you put some Frisket down on your paper, let it dry completely. It's almost like a rubber cement when it dries. And you can paint right over it. And when your paint dries, you can then go ahead and lift the Frisket and your paper will still be white. So it just protects your paper. But I'm going to show you by doing a landscape, just a really whimsical little landscape. I put liquid Frisket on the trees, the bushes, the grass, the flowers, and I believe I did a little bit of the sky as well. So today I'm going to show you how to use the liquid Frisket by creating one of these little landscapes. So sometimes the liquid Frisket comes with this like little pen looking thing with like a rubbery tip at the end, and that's to apply your Frisket. I don't use it because it's big and bulky, and I wish I had one here to show you. I think I actually even just ended up throwing it away, but it was too big and bulky. I couldn't get in little details. It would just kind of put it down, and I don't know, I didn't like it. So another thing you could do is use a really old brush, or it could be a new brush, but a brush that you just don't care about because you're never really going to get it fully clean. So you can apply it with a brush. My tip for you is if you do apply it with a brush, just expect never to use that brush again for watercolor because it will ruin it. But if you dip it in water first and then dip it in your Frisket, it will preserve the tip of your brush just a little bit. Otherwise, if you don't, you might have to discard the brush right away. After your first painting, you might have to just get a new paintbrush for every painting. And another way I'm going to show you to apply it today is if you want to get really, really detailed, like I did with all these little grass and all the little branches and stuff, is a toothpick. And a toothpick is really easy. You can get in there, you can get very detailed, and then you could just throw away your toothpick and who cares? So, oh, and another thing is when we're taking off the liquid Frisket, you're going to be using this Gummy Eraser. So I'm going to show you how to use that too. It's kind of like one of those erasers to remove rubber cement. Okay, so what we're going to do is you could draw out your landscape if you want to. Actually, maybe I will draw out my landscape for you just so you can see what I'm doing here. Okay, so I'm going to be bringing in all these hills and stuff, and then I'm going to be using the Frisket for all little trees on the hills. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of come in, and you don't have to draw this out if you don't want to. You don't even have to follow along with me. You could do whatever you could even do a flower and use the liquid Frisket. So I'm just showing you how to use it today. And I'm going to come in, I'm going to make some hills, and then maybe I'll make another hill coming down this way. Okay, so that's about all I'm going to do for that. Just to show you where my placement is. Otherwise, it would have looked like floating trees, and you wouldn't have understood probably what I was doing here. So I dipped my toothpick actually in water just to kind of let the liquid Frisket kind of just drip off my toothpick here a little bit so it doesn't get too rubbery right away. And it's just this creamy consistency. It kind of has a little bit of an odor to it. So I wouldn't sit here and smell it all day. I don't know how good it is for you to sit here and breathe this in. It's kind of like a rubber cement. So I'm going to dip my toothpick in there, and I'm going to slowly start to just bring in, and I'm just dragging my toothpick, and you might need to keep reapplying because this stuff does dry pretty fast. And I'm just going to be bringing in, I'm not sure if you can see that, just some like long blades of grass. And you can maneuver it around. It will puddle on you. Wherever you lay it down, it might puddle on you. So you could just kind of keep pushing it around. And then maybe I'll bring in a few, see, it even drips on you like that too. So if it drips on you like that too, you're just gonna have to kind of flow with it, unless you pick it up right away. I'll just put a tree here. And I'll bring the branches up. So wherever you're gonna lay this down, you are gonna have white paper showing through. And then if you want the white paper to show through, obviously you're done. But if you wanted to go ahead and choose like a different color, let's say you were making your sky like a dark blue, but then you wanted like a light green or whatever tree. Obviously, when you're doing watercolors, you can't put the light over the dark. It won't be as vibrant as if it was actually laid down on white paper first. So that's another way of doing it. So if you want to have a lighter color on top of a darker color, then preserve that white, and then you can go ahead, lift this later when it dries, and put down your lighter color. Or, like I said, just leave it white. So I think we're just going to leave it white today, maybe give it a couple little shadows with some Payne's Gray. That's what I did in my original painting. So let's go ahead and put in some trees. And it does get a little messy. It does start drying on you. You do have to work kind of quickly. It does start to clump. I don't know if you can see this. It does start to clump, and then what you're going to want to do is just take your paper towel and just kind of clean off your tip a little bit. I'm going to dip it in water again because I can see it's starting to get hard right away. And I don't know if this is really doing anything. I think it works, but by dipping it in water first. And then obviously the more you apply, the longer it's going to take to dry. So you could take a blow dryer and dry this, or a heat gun. All right, so let's put some, you know what, I'm going to put a little bush over here too, because I like things in threes. So I don't want just the two trees there. So I'll put a little bush right here. There. Okay. And then let's go ahead and put some, maybe more like trees, like more like those bush, like the arborvitae trees over on this side. So they'll be more like the pine tree look. And I'm just pushing it around with my toothpick. I'm just trying to get the shape of a tree. And let's put another one here. And then you can come in and fill, obviously when you're scratching the paper, trying to move it around, you are leaving some of that white paper showing, so that will get some of the paint on it. If you don't like that, then just go in with some more Frisket and just cover up those little scratch marks that you made. But I actually think it's kind of nice sometimes to leave those little scratch marks alone, because then it gives it a little bit of texture and dimension to your painting. All right, let's go in and put some more blades of grass or flower. You know, let's do some little polka dots, some flowers over on this side. And you can make your little dots as small as you want. I have a big clump there, so what I'm doing is I'm just going back, dipping it in, and taking some of that out so I can get some smaller little flowers. But if you want to leave a nice big one there, then just keep grabbing from your original, your tube here. And then you can make some nice big ones, nice big dots. And then if you want, what you could do, if you don't like the circle, what you could do is you could take your toothpick and start dragging it out, kind of making like a little star shape or a little flower shape. Give some of these a little bit of a different shape. And you don't have to do that to all of them, but... And then see, it's starting to clump here on the end of my toothpick. So once it starts clumping, I just wipe it off. I'll dip it in my water once again, every time I wipe it off, and then I'll just grab some more. And then maybe I'll make some blades of grass or stems coming up. Okay, and then let's see, why don't I do some bushes up on top here? Maybe I'll make some bushes going, oops, Maybe I'll make some bushes just going down that hill. And make sure you bump it right up to your hill. Otherwise it'll look like your bushes are floating in space. Okay. All right, so I think that's all we're gonna do for this one because I just wanted to show you really quickly how to use the Frisket. So I'm gonna let this dry and then we're gonna go over it with some watercolors. So my Frisket dried and you could just touch it, and if it's really tacky, you know, obviously that it's not coming off on your finger. Obviously if it's coming off on your finger, it means it's not ready yet. But if you can touch it and it's just tacky and it's not coming off, then it's definitely ready. Because it's always going to have a little bit of that tackiness to it. Like I said, it's like a rubber cement. So I am going to pick up, I do have my 2 cups of clean water, one for cool, one for warm colors. I have my Winsor Newton watercolors, and I have a variety of sizes of brushes here. I have some smaller ones for details for later, and then a little bit larger sizes. I have a 12, a 7, and a 5 for some of the bigger spaces. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to start hill by hill. And I don't want my hills to bleed into each other. So what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to dry my hills in between. Like I'll do this one first and then I'll probably dry it, do this one, dry it, do this one and dry it. So, because I just don't want them to blend into each other at this moment right now. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to wet my space. So let's start with this hill first. And I'm just kind of going right up to the edge of the hill. And then right up to the edge of this hill, and then you can go right over and put water right over your Frisket. And if it is dry, you're good to go. Nothing's gonna happen. But if it was still wet, then obviously it might smear a little bit and you would have to just let it dry and start, you know, let it dry and then start over. All right, I'm gonna be picking up some of my green here, and it doesn't matter what color you're using for this. I think I'm using a sap green right now, but it doesn't really matter. You could do any color hills you want. And I'm just following along with where I applied the water. And I'm just gonna lay that on right over my Frisket. So as you can see, you can still see the yellow of the Frisket coming through. So when we take that off, it's gonna be nice and white paper under there. So you can go ahead and apply as many colors as you want at this point. I think I'm gonna make this even darker, so I'm gonna use a little of my green, Winsor green blue. And just kind of apply it wherever you think that you want. A little bit of dark, a little bit of light. I think I want the dark in the corners here, so I'm actually gonna apply even a little bit of Payne's Gray. Get it even darker. And the darker you make something around where your Frisket is, the more contrast it's gonna be when you take the Frisket off. So it's gonna really, really show nice and white. If you were to do Frisket and leave this, let's say light pink or something, it's not gonna be as noticeable because around the white is gonna be a light color. So it won't be as contrasty. So around your Frisket, you might want, depending on what look you're trying to go for, but I like it where it's nice and contrasty. So I'm gonna make it nice and dark around my Frisket. So that way when I take it off, it's nice and white. And you can definitely see that white. I'm gonna apply a little bit more of my Payne's Gray. Get it all nice and saturated over here. Let that bleed in nicely. And it's really nice to do these little landscapes, whimsical landscapes, because it's out of your imagination. You're not copying something, you're not looking at something, you're not looking at every little detail. It's just fun. It's just kind of a little exercise to let your mind go and have fun. Okay, so I'm gonna blow dry this really quick so we can go on to another hill. Okay. So it's not completely dry, and that's okay. I just wanted more of my edges to be dry so they're not bleeding into each other. I don't really care if all this is still wet over here. And if I wasn't doing a video right now, I probably would have let this just air dry on its own. It starts to blend in better. When you start to speed up the process with a hair dryer or a heat gun, it doesn't dry as naturally as it would if you just let it dry on its own. So that's just one other little tip. The reason I did that is because of the video, and I wanted to speed this along for you. All right, so now I'm going to go on to another hill. I'm going to switch over to my larger brush just because this hill is bigger. So I'm going to go ahead and get this hill nice and saturated. The foreground is nice and, when the foreground is nice and dark, it just adds a lot of dimension to your painting. And as I was saying before, I really love doing these little whimsical landscapes. They're fun. You could just let loose. You don't have to, like I said, you don't have to look at anything. You don't have to copy anything. You don't have to be precise. You're just letting your imagination go. So these are just great little paintings, little exercises for you to do. So you don't have to be, if you just want to have fun and just not think too much about how perfect something is. All right, I am going to let that dry, and actually I'm going to let this one dry naturally, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over here and work my green a little bit more. I want it a little bit more vibrant up here. And just be careful not to bump it up to each other. Pretty. All right, I'm going to blow dry that, and I will do my third hill. Okay, so pretty much I just wanted the edge of my hills to be dry, so I can go ahead and do this one. These are obviously still really saturated. That's okay. I just really wanted to dry up a little bit of my edge here. I'm going to go ahead and make more like a pink hill. Again, this is totally your imagination. You can make the whole rainbow. It doesn't matter. Let's do a little bit of this Perm Rose. And maybe this one I'll do on dry. Those I had wet first, so it was wet on wet. This is more of a dry technique, just to show you the difference here a little bit. You have a little bit more control when it's the wet on dry than you do the wet on wet. I'm going to use a little bit of the Opera Pink by I have a couple colors here of Daniel Smith. The Opera Pink and one of the greens. I think it was the Viridian Green. So see how this is not bleeding because my paper is not wet. It's going to stop wherever your paper is dry. It's going to stop right there. It has nowhere to bleed to. So you're just going to have to bring it all the way down. If that's the way you want to work, is wet on dry, that's what you're just going to have to do. is just bring it down on your own. It's not going to bleed for you. But now that my whole paper is, or my whole hill here is wet, now it's the wet on wet technique. So I'm doing a little bit of both. That's pretty. Let's add a little bit of And you don't want to take your frisket off at this point until you're completely sure that you laid all your paint and you're done with it, and then you could take your frisket off. And then also you want to make sure your paper is completely dry before you take your frisket off, because if your paper is not completely dry, you're going to start smearing, as you're taking this off, you're going to start smearing that color into your white. And obviously that defeats the whole purpose of why we just put that frisket there. So let your paper dry completely. Around where you had left your frisket, if you're going to leave it white. If you're going to make these nice and dark trees, you can go ahead and leave your sky light. So then that way there's contrast, because you're going to do the dark trees against the light sky, or if you're doing the light trees against the dark sky. Let's see, I will add a little bit more of that blue down here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in and I'm going to put a couple little shadows under my trees and my bushes. So let's see, swap my colors. And I think I used this blue. So you can do your blue again. You could do a little Payne's gray mixed in, and always think of where your shadows are going to be, where your light source is going to be. So if your light source is coming from this way, your shadows are going to be bleeding down this way. Just make sure your shadows are kind of going in the same direction. Otherwise, your eye doesn't really understand where to look. When your shadows are all going in different directions, it confuses your eye. I'm going to drop in a little bit of Payne's gray, especially around where I've got my frisket. It'll be really, really pretty once we lift this. All right, so my shadows are coming this way. All right, so if my shadows are coming this way, then these trees, the shadow should kind of come that way too. So I'm gonna do the shadows coming out like this for both trees. And then you could do all your little, if you want to move to a smaller brush for this, go for it. You don't have to do it exact what your tree is, but And you want to kind of give it a little bit of roundness, like it's going down the hill a little bit. So if you can curve some of your lines a little bit, that'd be good. That a little bit. Help it along up the branches. So see how that's bleeding into the branches automatically? I'm just kind of pushing it a little bit. There. All right. And I am going to do the same thing with this bush here. So I'll bring in a little bit of my green. I like my shadows nice and deep. It's preference. You don't have to make your shadows as dark as mine. I love contrast in painting, so that's why I just exaggerate my shadows. I am going to turn this a little bit. Get my perm rose, and I'm going to go under the bushes here a little bit, and I'm going to bring them out because they're kind of in clusters. So you don't want like little circles on here. You want them to be kind of rough looking because they're obviously bushes and there's going to be all sorts of little leaves and there. Then I'm going to bring in a little bit of Payton's Gray right at the tip here. You can push it around. So see how my shadows are all going in the same way? So it kind of means like my light source, either my sun is going down and it's over here, or my moon is over here. Whatever my light source is, it's over here because my shadows are going this way. And I'm going to deepen up. Now that I deepened up my shadows, I'm going to deepen up a little bit down here too in my grass. Just kind of closer to the corners of my painting. And then I'll do the same thing on this side. And then you can bring some little blades of grass up too if you want to. See, like some of your grass is shadowed? You can totally do that too right now. Okay. I'll make this shadow a little bigger. All right. And then if you think you put a little too much gray, just lift it off with a clean brush. Just lift it off a little bit. All right, I'm going to go ahead and I am going to do, let's see. Actually, I think I'm going to go ahead and dry my shadows. That way we can take the Frisket off and then put some detail. Okay, so my painting is nice and dry. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is there's a couple ways of removing this Frisket. Number one is I've seen a lot of people take their finger and make sure it's a clean finger. Otherwise, you're going to be smearing your painting a little bit. And they take a clean finger and you just rub it back and forth and see how the Frisket is kind of coming off like that. And then when it starts to clump up, I just pick it off. But another way of doing it is getting this eraser. It's a gummy eraser and it's for rubber cement, to remove rubber cement, but it works totally with this stuff also. And when it starts to clump up, I use the corner, and when it starts to clump up, I just pick it off and I just put it on the side and I just kind of keep rubbing along, getting that Frisket off. And you are gonna have to work a little bit, especially where your Frisket is a little bit thicker. It's going to be a little bit harder. See how it's trying to clump up on me? It's going to be a little bit harder to take off. Obviously where you have a little bit more Frisket. But if you just keep working it carefully and gently, it will eventually come off. See how it's clumping up? Then I'll just probably pick it off a little bit and I will put it on the side. And if you rub your finger gently around it, obviously a clean finger, if you feel that it's nice and clean, that means you took all the Frisket off. If you still feel a little tackiness, that means there's still a little Frisket left on there. I removed all the Frisket. So see how it just preserved the whites of your paper. So you can go ahead, if you like this look, you could go ahead and leave it white, maybe just add a little bit of details. If you want to go in and maybe make these bushes green, like a light green or a vibrant green, now's the time to do that. So if you hadn't put the Frisket here and you just did your straight blue hill, and then you tried to make these a vibrant green or a light green, it wouldn't have worked. It would have changed the color automatically because it would have been the green over the blue. But right now you're gonna get the true color because it is gonna be the green over the white. So let me switch these cups. And I switched down to a number 5 brush. So if you were following along with me, and I'm gonna pick up a little bit of my sap green. And I'm gonna give this just a little bit, actually, you know what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna do the wet on wet technique. So I'm gonna wet my bushes here first. Just a little bit. And I'm gonna leave a little bit more of the white on the right side, because here again, I'm gonna have, so my shadows are on the left, so you know your sun or your moon or whatever your light source is coming from the right, because your shadows are going down on your left. So try and leave the right of your trees and stuff white or a lighter color. And I'm gonna come in and I'm just gonna bring in a little bit of this green, and I'm gonna leave a little bit of the white showing through because I don't want it to be too dark. But here again, it just depends on what kind of mood you're going for in your painting. If you wanted these to be nice, you know, dark, vibrant trees, definitely. I'm going for a little bit of a lighter mood here, so I'm gonna leave a lot of white showing through. I'm just gonna dab a little bit of my green going up. And then you can always come back in and give it another layer. And if you think you did too much, you can always come in and with your paper towel, lift up some of it. There. Okay. All right, I'm gonna do the same thing to my, my grass down here. I'm gonna go ahead and make that more of a golden yellow. And I will do my bushes on this side. I'll do them more of that green again. Okay, so maybe now, and actually down more towards the ground here, where the moon or the sun is not shining, it's a little bit darker, more towards where the tree or the bush and the hill meet. So I'm going to add a little bit of Payne's Gray down here and just let that bleed up. I'll help it along in certain areas. There. And then if you think it's a little too dark, take a clean brush, dab it off on your paper towel. You can always pick it back up like this. And we can always layer it again. It's best just to start slow and light and work your way up with watercolors. If we were doing acrylics, it wouldn't really matter. We could always put white on black or whatever, and it would stay. Once obviously the black was dry, if you added white, it would stay. But that's acrylics. This is watercolor. So you have to kind of build yourself up to it because there's no going back. Once you put a color down, you can always lighten it a little bit, but you will never get that white back. Unless at the end, if you wanted to come in and use like a white gouache or a white acrylic or a white like liquid ink, you could do that as well. And I have done that before where my whites don't get really truly white. Actually, maybe I will do that at the end of this painting for you and just show you what I'm talking about. But as of for right now, we're just trying to leave the white of the paper as our highlight. I'm going to deepen this up a little bit over here. And I'm going to bring in the Payne's Gray down on the bottom here too. Give it some shadow. All right. And if that's a little too much for you, come in, pick it up with a clean brush, dab it off on your paper towel. All right, so let's go ahead and do these trees. I'm gonna do blue. This is my painting and I'm gonna do blue trees. So I'm gonna come in just on mostly the white side. I mean, the left side because I'm going to leave the right white. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of highlight on the right side. Add a little more blue to that. I want it a little deeper. I'm going to add a little Payne's Gray over here. And now my green is dry already because we had done that a while ago. So I'm just going to help it along with a wet brush. Dab it in a little bit going up. Now it would be bleeding if my tree was still wet. If the green was still wet, it would be bleeding on its own, but it's not. So this is considered wet on dry. You have a little bit more control of where it goes. All right, so let's go ahead and get a little decorative here. And let's bring in a couple little trees, maybe where? Maybe just even, maybe let's just do one tree right here. So we'll move over. I'm using a very thin brush, a 000. And I will be bringing in just, say we've got this really little tree in the background. And I'm just using my Payne's Gray. I'm barely touching my paper. I'm bringing in this really delicate little tree so it looks like it's way back there. Either it's way back there or it's a very young tree so it's not that big yet. So see that? It gives it an extra little interest. The more detail you do, the more interest it is. I'm going to go ahead and add a little detail to this bush here. So see how much just adding that little tree in the back does. Let's go in and put a... Okay, so this is just a generic brand of white acrylic ink. or I should say, this is not ink, is it? Yeah, it is. It's acrylic ink, yeah. And then I'm gonna use my small brush again. And I'm gonna dip it in there. And let's say we wanted like little more polka dots on this side. Let's say we didn't do enough polka dots and we wanted a little bit more. You can always come in and add a little bit more detail. Let's say we wanted just a little bit more coming down this way. See? And let's say we wanted a few more coming up this way. This just adds a little bit more detail to your painting with highlights. Now, some artists would say that's cheating because you need to leave the white of the paper showing. I say, as long as you achieve your goal, it doesn't matter how you got there. It's fine. Let's say I wanted to crispen up these highlights a little bit more on this tree. I could do that. Let's say I wanted to put in some leaves coming up this way, some more leaves or blades of grass. You can always do that. And you could have totally done this with the Frisket if you would have thought about it at the beginning, but sometimes you don't think about until you start seeing the painting come together. You don't really realize what you want. So then you're kicking yourself that you didn't put Frisket there in the beginning. Well, you didn't know you wanted Frisket there in the beginning because your painting wasn't done yet. You couldn't visualize it. So this is just a way to kind of help you along. And let's say you wanted some more blades of grass coming up this way. And if you wanted to go in and add the moon, you could totally add the moon. Wash off your brush really good because that's ink and you don't want the ink stuck in there. So these are your good watercolor brushes. If you wanted to move over to an acrylic brush, you could have totally done that too. Let's say I wanted to put the moon right here. There's my moon. And I can let that dry and then I could put a little yellow paint over it, whether it be acrylic, liquid acrylic yellow or even yellow watercolor. Let's say I wanted some lines. Let's get really, really decorative. And let's put some lines coming around the hill like this. That adds just even a little bit more dimension to your painting. So you can just keep playing around with this. So whether you're using the Frisket and then just a little bit of the white acrylic ink at the very end, as long as you're happy with what you have achieved. So this is the one I did for you last night. I was just practicing last night to see what I wanted to do for you on video. So here's the two paintings, the one I did last night and the one I did today. So I hope I showed you a little bit of how to use the Frisket. Thanks so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it and learned a little something. And if you did, please give me a thumbs up and you can leave a comment in the comment section. And you can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you want more videos like this one. Have a great day. Bye.